Hello, I'm back, and this time covering Catalyst Gaige. A few people have made videos showcasing Catalyst Gaige, and this will be my video showcasing Catalyst Gaige, because I don't think we've really reached the peak of Catalyst Gaige yet. So the first and most obvious pitfall in the way of this build is contending with the fact that dot damage just isn't very good on OP10, and that pretty much all guns in this game have a fixed 478,000 dot damage per second. But you might now be thinking of the guns that actually have an increased dot damage. Things like the Thunderbolt Fist, Hellfire, the Moxie SMGs, and whatever else that I'm not thinking of at the moment. And I'm asking you to ignore these guns, because they were clearly put into the game as a joke by Gearbox to rub salt in the wound. What we need is a real source of dot damage. We need to be using grenades. And not just any grenades, we are specifically looking for grenades that have both a long lifetime and that deal a lot of instances of damage. This is to both maximize the chance of a dot spreading and to maximize the dot stack as fast as possible. More on that in a moment. So for our shock grenades, our best options are going to be the electric chair, the Stormfront, and the Quasar. And I know that the Chain Lightning and the Lightning Bolt both have a much higher dot damage per second, but the problem with these grenades is they do their damage instantaneously, which means they are kind of unreliable at spreading their dot, and even worse than that, because electrocution damage only lasts for 2 seconds, that means if we want to have a 100% uptime on our dots, we're going to be throwing a grenade every 2 seconds at a minimum, which would be completely unsustainable. But with the electric chair, Stormfront, and Quasar grenades, so long as these grenades are live, they will be constantly emitting shock damage, which means our electrocution dot will have a 100% uptime for the duration of the grenade. So moving on to our fire grenades. Whoops. Our best options will be the Anti-Fection, the Fire Bee, Fire Storm, Fire Burst, and did I miss one? I don't think I did. Yeah, so for fire grenades, we have the Anti-Fection, Fire Beast, Fire Storm, and the Fire Burst. And last and kind of least for corrosion grenades, we have the Pandemic grenade, if I can find it, the Corrosive Cloud, and maybe the Corrosive Crossfire, although that one's pretty dangerous to use. But it does the job, and it's actually, I think it's the highest corrosion dot grenade in the game also. Because, as you can see, the Pandemic has slightly less. So, I now need to address a bit of a misconception that there seems to be in this game about how you cannot stack dots, which isn't quite true. So I have this single projectile slow hand here, which has a 48% chance to corrode. Now, if I were to shoot the target dummy, and yep, now that he's corroding, you can see that he begins to take corrosion damage every 1/3 of a second. And if I were to instead just to completely unload on the target dummy, pretty soon you'll see that he just begins to absolutely erupt with damage ticks. Although, it's not really cooperating at the moment. There we go. So, as you can see, there are multiple damage ticks going off, because each dot on him is firing off at its own 1/3 of a second damage interval. And to maybe make a bit of a even clearer example, this is a level 10 slow hand with a very low level dot. And when I shoot the target dummy, you can see it begins to take 2 damage a second, or well, 2 damage every 1/3 of a second. And if I were to shoot him with the high level slow hand, you can see that both the low level dot and high level dot are coexisting simultaneously on the target. And yep. That being said, there is a dot stack limit in this game, and for fire and corrosion dots, that stack limit is probably 6, although there might be some room for error within that statement. I'm not entirely sure at the moment. And for shock damage, the stack limit seems to be 1. So what I think is happening is people are wrongly conflating the shock dot stack limit of 1 to mean all dots have a stack limit of 1, which, as you can see, just isn't quite true. So, now that all that is out of the way, we can move on to our skills. And sorry to say, I just walked you into an ambush. We first need to talk about more pet, because I'm pretty sure it's broken. So if you were not aware, you can actually check any changes in your status effect while in-game by quickly swapping back and forth between your weapons like this. So if I just turn on my badass rank, I will gain a 11.2% chance to my corrosion chance. So if I just swap back and forth, whoops, wrong button, you can see that it is now a 53.4% chance, up from a 48% chance to corrode. However, if I were to disable my badass rank and equip my catalyst class mod, and then put a point into more pet, I should now have a 12% increased chance to corrode, but it goes from a 48% chance to a 48% chance, which suggests that it isn't doing anything. And at this point, I need to give a shout out to Stereo Lotus, who went out of their way to pretty much test this for me, so big thanks to them. And they also answered a couple of other questions that I ended up having while making this video. And they pretty much also confirmed to me that it looks like Morpep doesn't do anything, which is pretty unfortunate, because Morpep is boosted by like half of Gaige's class mods. But moving on, we will max out Myelin, put 4 points into Gorillas. This point should probably go into Gorillas. And now we can talk about these 3 skills. So, starting off with Evil Enchantress, that is a pretty straightforward skill, and I'm not going to rant too hard about this, but I don't really get why it's a kill skill, because kill skills are limited window opportunity bonuses, and dots are, slow damage over time effects. These are kind of antithetical to each other, but whatever. For what it is, it does work pretty good when it does work. And all the status effects align. To talk about Shock and Awe, this is a bit of a weird one, because while the Shock Nova of Shock and Awe is pretty bad, the electrocution damage it provides is actually halfway decent, and I mean that fairly literally. It's significantly better than gun dots, but not nearly as good as grenade dots. It's alright if you're using either a fire or corrosion gun and want to spread electrocution damage while doing that, but it's nothing like amazing. And electrical burn. So electrical burn, for what it is a very good skill. It gets to pretty much double dip in our damage formula, because the electrical burn damage is first determined by the electrocution damage, which is increased by Evil Enchantress, our class mod, the Bone of the Ancients, and then Wires Don't Talk. And then Slag, I don't know if I've mentioned that yet. So, and then when the burn damage starts, it gets to benefit from all of these bonuses once again. But the overall problem with electrical burn and shock gauge as a whole is it's still just going to be far less effective than just elemental matching. The damage of electrical burn with the electric chair grenade and slag and the wires don't talk bonus and matching elements with the burn itself, you'll be doing around 1 million damage per tick, which, while that is a lot, that's also about what you would be getting if you just used a fire grenade. And to make electrical burn kind of worse, it seems to only be able to stack up to 1 time per target, whereas the fire grenade can stack up to 6 times per target. So, for what it is, electrical burn is a good skill. It is going to pretty much double the damage of your shock dots, but I do wish it was kind of better. And since we are so far down in the blue skill tree, we might as well take Make It Sparkle, because it is probably one of the top 3 Death Trap skills. Moving on to the red skill tree, we're taking Anarchy and Smaller, Lighter, Faster. This is not going to be an Anarchy build, but we do want the bonuses of Anarchy. We skip Pre-Shunk Cyberpunk, because we're never going to have more than like 50 stacks at a time, maybe. 1 point into Robot Rampage, because this is the single best Death Trap skill that he gets, so you should always pick this up. We put 4 points into Blood-Soaked Shields to both progress down the skill tree, and it's also just a very good shield skill. And this enables us to take Discord, Typecast Iconoclast, and Rational Anarchist. These are the 3 core skills of Discord looping, which, while we're not going to be making very good use out of Discord looping, Discord does represent a majority of our healing over time, so we definitely want to pick it up. 3 points into Annoyed Android purely to move down the skill tree so we can take the Nth Degree. The Nth Degree is a skill of dubious quality, but it is at its best with guns that have unlisted projectiles, because when the Nth Degree procs, the Nth Degree bullet can create more unlisted projectiles, which combined with a Pimpernel means we can potentially blossom Pimpernel shots all across the battlefield, which is very nice. Moving on to the green skill tree, the character we currently are playing is in fact Gaige, so we're maxing out close enough. We will put 4 points into Cooking Up Trouble for a bit more healing, max out Fancy Mathematics, Upshot Robot for more death trap duration, 5 out of 5 in Unstoppable Force, and if you have 5 points in Unstoppable Force, you only need to put 4 points into Blood-Soaked Shields, so that's a small skill point optimization there. 1 point into Sterner Stuff, because it will give you a massive unlisted 50% fire damage resistance. And then we max out, we put 4 points into 20% Cooler, and then that leaves us with 1 point to put into Sharing His Carrot, which is a nice transition into our gear. So for our shield, we're using the Big Boom Blaster, because we're going to be throwing a lot of grenades. And between my shield and the shield that Death Trap gets, we will have plenty of boosters to keep our grenades and also rockets topped off. And speaking of our grenades, we are a bit spoiled for choice here, depending on how you want to play this build. If you want to do primarily dot damage, I would recommend either the Electric Chair or the Stormfront, but if you want to do more direct damage, I would switch over to the Quasar Grenade, and your gameplay loop will largely consist of grouping things up with the Quasar, slagging them all with the Pimpernel, and then using the Peak Opener to kill everything while they're all grouped up. But this build is to showcase off dots, so instead, this Peak Opener will be replaced by... My mouse doesn't want to work. Weird. This Peak Opener will be replaced by a Twister, and
Show me some
I think
grenades.
my mouse is dying. That's awkward. And a shock pimpernel. Where is it? There it is. So this will be a typical loadout for our shock grenade for the electric chair or the stormfront. If you are going to use the fire grenades or the Trojan grenades, I would swap out the twister for a matching pimpernel, and also be sure to match a bone with that. So with all of that out of the way, I think we can now move on to gameplay. So here I am in the Bloodshot Stronghold, and to start things off, I think I will be showcasing the Fire Bee. For a bit of transparency, this isn't my first time going through the Bloodshots with this build, and a problem with using like the Electric Chair or the Stormfront in the beginning section of Bloodshots is the confined spaces ends up causing all the Tesla coils to spawn close together, which ends up really throwing off the like accuracy of how much damage like our dots are doing, because getting hit by quad Tesla coils is quite a lot of damage. So yeah, I'm going to start it off with the Fire Bee. I'll let that guy pass for a moment. Summon up Death Trap. And for the Ironclad, I'm just going to have to kill him with my Twister, because he resists fire damage. Uh, Everything's already dead over here. What happened? Was that the Fire Bee or was that Death Trap? I'm not quite sure. So let's throw my bee, and I'll try and show off the burn damage. That was mostly the grenade damage there. And that is a fair criticism of the build. It's kind of hard to tell how much damage is being done by the grenade and how much is being done by the actual damage over time. And I'd say it's more of like a 60-40 operation, where 60% of the work is being done by the grenade and the last 40% is being done by the damage over time. But it's kind of hard to tell. That guy did burn to death, so at least her dots look like they're doing something. I'll try and catch that guy at the edge of our grenade to try and burn him a bit more. So yeah, as you can hopefully see, with this build, our burn is actually doing a decent amount of damage. I'm gonna have to get my health regenerating. Let's strip his shield, throw our grenade. Against badasses, our dots definitely look a lot less impressive, but that health bar is moving. Oh, that guy's still alive. Thank you, Death Trap. Eh, shoot. I tried to get behind the barricade. Didn't work. And I... I'll still use the fire bee for this room. Want to back up. Let's try and hit his face. Or not. Let's kill that turret. And I got a sight on you guys. Well, that's unfortunate. Will the burn damage finish? Nope, it ran out. And I'm caught on the fence. I can't exactly see what's going on over there, but hopefully close enough is hitting people. That's the electrical burn damage from our shock and awe skill. Is that everybody, or will you guys spawn over? Yep. And I got caught in my own grenade. Can I catch that? Yep. So at this point, I think I'll swatch over to the electric chair and our shock bone. And something that is nice is, as you can see, we haven't had any issues with our grenades despite fairly liberally throwing them around, thanks to our big boom blaster. Let's try and get one way over there. I'm gonna have to retreat a bit for this ironclad. Let's try and... Well, maybe that didn't work out. But you can see what I mean by using the electric chair in confined spaces right here, where it just completely causes all the Teslas to just focus on a single guy. I might be dead here. I am more than likely dead here. Yep, that was my fault. I shouldn't have thrown the electric chair at my feet. But we press on. And because none of our damage is actually reliant on anarchy, uh, we don't really suffer from dying like that, which is always a plus. That was flashy. Yeah, I think all of them got caught on the pipe. All those Teslas. And you're up there. Is that a grenade? Yes. Let's get our grenades going out. Yeah, it's hard to tell how effective our dots are, which is kind of just how dots work on OP10. And no matter what you do, you're always going to just be more effective shooting a gun rather than using dots. But yeah, with Evil Enchantress going, it looks like that's doing a decent amount of damage with our electric chair. Still not as good as what the Fire Bee was doing, though. Uh, no, poor booster. It's gone. Uh, Thank you, Death Trap. And now Mad Mike is spawning. I need to get close real fast. And let's clean up right here. So let's now engage. Let's try and get this guy before he kills us from behind. And you're not getting attached to the Tesla coil. Oh, thank you for jumping over that barricade for me. This build can be fairly ammo efficient because we're really spreading out our ammo types between our sniper, shotgun, and our grenades. So that's always a plus. We have very little risk of ever running out of ammo. And you didn't get slain. Will I be able to recover from here? Yep. Let's get the high ground. In the very least, if this isn't a good dot build, it is at least a good electric chair build, because boosting that damage by 72% is a lot. There's a couple boosters down here, and we have one more group of enemies to kill. And there were a bunch of weak people, so that didn't take too long. So with that, I think I will now quickly dip over to Washburne Refinery. Alright, I've arrived in Washburne Refinery, so I'm going to swap over to my Pandemic, my Corrosive Bone, and I'm actually going to swap out my Twister for the Infection. The Infection is one of the few guns, or rather, it pretty much is the only gun with a high enough dot damage to be worthwhile to use. And for this Infection, I've specifically parted it with a Vladoff grip for the fire rate and the binary prefix for the double bullets, which is important because this will give us 4 separate chances to corrode an enemy on hit. Once or twice from each of the bullets, and then twice more from the splash that the bullets naturally have. So, let's... And another nice thing about using the Infection here is it has a kind of a comparable dot damage to our grenades, and because it isn't a grenade, it won't be bloated by the grenade damage, allowing us to more easily see just how effective our dots actually are. And we can extrapolate how good the dots are for the Infection with all of our other grenades, because it can be pretty hard to tell. Well, those grenades are doing their own bits of damage while the dots are going off. That's Saigon. That did not. So, as you can see, we're pretty readily melting this guy. Although, as you can also see, a very obvious problem with using dots to kill things is it's very slow, which means you are also liable to just kind of die in the process. So let's start throwing our pandemics, and let's see how those are doing. Pretty good. Oh, here's a power loader. Let's get him to stop spinning his arms. And watch him melt. I think that pot loader just blew up on me. Whoops. Let's get rid of those shields. And let's cower a bit so we don't die. And Evil Enchantress just activated, and that guy melted because of it. And I think I might have just caught my own dot by that uh, Bowlitter's bullet reflection, which definitely hurts. I guess that's a good thing to point out at the moment. So this Big Boom Blaster is triple Anshin. I prefer triple Anshin because it has, I think, a bit over double the capacity of a triple Balabon. It's not double, but it's uh, getting there, and it's only has a 5% less chance for boosters. And between blood-soaked shields, if I can see it, and the boosters that naturally spawn from the shield, I just prefer having a much larger capacity, although it would be completely reasonable to put a Malobon corrosion immunity part on this blaster because our corrosion dots are very lethal to ourselves due to just how long they last. And Deathtrap just got ahead of me. Because this is a badass loader, I would prefer using grenades against him, because we need that extra oomph from the grenade dot damage. I'm probably not doing the whole of Washburn. I'm just going to do the little arena over there, and then probably call the video. And there he goes. He didn't get corroded at all. That's annoying. And, well, these guys are spawning in. It'll be a good time to heal. Although I guess I just killed myself like an idiot. But we recover anyways. Pick up the health vial, and try not to get caught on that barricade. Let's not stand close to him when he dies. Something else to point out. On average, it will only take us, like, I think 3 shots with the infection to reach the dot stack cap. Uh, because each time we pull the trigger, we get 4 chances to spread a dot. So that's another reason why I prefer the binary prefix on the infection. And we're kind of struggling here, but mostly because I'm just sort of standing around waiting for them to die and not, like, making proper use of cover. Oh, the badass just spawned. I'm gonna go over here. There he goes. And let's dot him up. And let's get Deathtrap in there as well. And that's that. So I think that is a decent point to end the video, because I think you guys will largely get the point. So with that out of the way, thank you for watching.